Now, 10 years ago today, gee, time flies, doesn't it? It does not seem that long ago, but New Zealand endured one of its deadliest disasters. It was a 6.3 magnitude earthquake that rocked Christchurch, killing 185 people and changing that beautiful city forever. I'll speak to a survivor of the horror in a moment, but first, let's take a look back at what happened a decade ago.
The day the city shook,
I saw all this dust just pouring up.
Families feared the worst.
Desperately then wanted to know where my daughter was because she was in Christchurch in the central city.
As buildings toppled,
Words can't describe it. It has simply tipped over.
workers were stranded and loved ones lost.
A police liaison person came over to us and said that she had some very bad news for us.
New Zealand's second largest city had already endured a powerful 7.1 magnitude quake just 5 months earlier. But this one, shallow and close to the city, was devastating. The CBD bore the brunt. Prue Taylor's husband was one of many inside the collapsed local TV building.
When the reports came out and people realised what an odd building it was a disaster waiting to happen.
Dozens of people were missing for days. An international search effort with around 600 Australians combed through the rubble.
We are just so grateful to people from across New Zealand, across Australia and across the world who really came to our aid.
Well, let's go to Christchurch now and catch up with Puramiria Parata Goodall, who is active in the recovery process and the arts in Christchurch. Thanks for joining us, Puramiria. Tell us firstly about the day itself. What can you recall of it? What did you go through?
Tēnā koutou. The day started normal, you know. I'm heading to work. It gets to lunchtime and I worked, at the time was working for Te Runanga o Ngaitahu, my tribal authority. We were located right in the centre of the city. It was lunchtime. A couple of the cousins and I decided to go and have lunch at the local food court. And then our lives were quite literally tipped upside down. And I remember at the time thinking, oh, it's just another shake. It's okay. But the shaking didn't stop. And I remember jumping under the table and holding on for dear life as the chaos started. You could hear things smashing, you could hear screaming and crying, and then the sirens started. Fortunately, my cousins and I were in the part of the food court that did not fall down. The other half of the food court did. So we were fortunate enough to be able to get ourselves and our friends and our family members that were in the same food court out onto Hereford Street, dodging buildings as buildings were coming down and scaffolding was coming down, climbing through rubble where we could see people had perished, and the land was still shaking. The liquefaction had already started and it was chaos in every direction. And it's those times that you see these natural leaders start to appear, you know, in a street of chaos where people are saying we need to get to open space and pushing us towards Latimer Square. So pretty darn horrific. And
just horrible.
You know, 10 years later.
Such a beautiful city. As you say, New Zealanders are used to earthquakes and tremors of the shaky isles, but this was a devastating earthquake. More than 180 people died. We're seeing some pictures now of the horrible destruction to some of the most famous buildings in Christchurch. Yeah. Look, there was enormous economic devastation. A lot of people left the city. Tell us how it's recovered 10 years on. Have people come back? Are you vibrant again? Is it rebuilding?
So 10 years on, significant changes for us as a city, significant changes for my iwi of Ngaitahu. You know, for the first time in our memory, we were afforded the opportunity to sit as an equal partner at the table with the city, with our crown. And now 10 years later, I see myself reflected in this new city that is now built up around us. I hear my own stories of my land and my people and my history as part of our normal daily interactions with our city. So our city has taken on an identity which is far more uniquely Aotearoa, and far more uniquely our story, our shared story. So huge impact and huge as far as, I think, an identity, a city with a very clear identity now, which is our city, our Aotearoa city.
Well, it's nice to hear that, because it's a very English city in many ways, designed by Colonel William Light, I think, like Adelaide and many of those old buildings. So it's great to hear that the Maori communities are involved in regenerating it and getting it back to life. Economically, are you recovered? And what about some of the lessons learned in architecture and rebuilding? Is it more, are the newer buildings more earthquake resistant?
Oh yes, the building codes here are phenomenal. So yes, we economically, I don't think anyone can hand on heart say that we are back into the same space we were pre-earthquake, but we are building back towards strong economy, not helped by, you know, the other chaos that has happened in the interim 10 years with fires and
the volcano, of course, is nearby, and the pandemic, yeah.
Absolutely. So we are on a journey, and we are still at the beginning, more at the beginning end of that journey rather than at the conclusion of that journey. But we're on a journey and we're doing it together. And so I think we are in a far better state 10 years on, but we're still a way off being the best New Zealand, Christchurch, Aotearoa, Waitaha people that we can be.
Thanks for joining us, Pura Maria, because when it's not netball or rugby or cricket, we're on your side.
Kia ora, ngā mihi.
There we go, 10 years ago in Christchurch. I was there not long before the earthquake, just a beautiful city, and to see some of those magnificent buildings crumble the way they did, the loss of life, that was a devastating period for Christchurch. And as you heard then, still struggling to get back. I know we get a lot of viewers in New Zealand. We're thinking of you. We know that was a particularly troubled period. And we can't wait to get back across the ditch, mind you, once we get this pandemic sorted out.